هلا بالخميس هلا بالخميس ويكند عيال هلا بالخميس هلا بالخميس هلا بالخميس ويكند عيال هلا بالخميس.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين ثم أما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It's Thursday evening, Laylatul Jum'ah, Hala bil Khamis, as our jingle ushers us in to the weekend, inshallah. And as he says, have a nice weekend. It's the eve of the best day of the week, upon which the sun rises, the day upon or in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Nabi Adam, the day in which he entered Jannah, the day he exited from Jannah, and the day upon which the day of Qiyamah will happen. So we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us the consciousness of the virtue of this day, inshaAllah ta'ala. So we have a very interesting topic this evening. A few months back, we had Brother Hudhaifa Al-Amriki from Riyadh on. I was speaking about marriage. And since we're now busy with the Qabil 2 issue again, he mentioned that the root of all marriage problems is money and the bedroom. That was his opinion. That was his theory that he had, and I think you agree with that. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you doing, Sheikh?
Alhamdulillah. How's the week been going?
Alhamdulillah, busy. Alhamdulillah, but looking forward to the weekend. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to our guest, Brother Abdul Aziz, Ustad Abdul Aziz Davids from the Camissa Islamic Funds. What do we call it, a business or a fund? Is it called a fund?
It's Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's a combination. It's a business, it's funds, it's asset management.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
You know, Sheikh Abdul Aziz and Sheikh Ashik, you know, we have this two extremes. You know, on the one side, people are saying that money makes the world go around. And on the other side, money is the root of all evil. Where does that leave the average Muslim with regards to money?
Yeah, that's a vexatious question. I think like most things in life, I mean, I noticed the cell phones on the table. So
Yes.
a cell phone is something, there's good in it, and it can be used for bad as well. So I think one of the key things is your response to money and how you interact with it.
Yes.
And I think our religion, Islam, is quite pertinent in terms of how we always adopt the moderate way.
Yes.
So we don't go down to extremes of either greed or abstinence, go sit in the hills and, you know, don't worry, Allah will provide. I think you need to make efforts, and then obviously the rest you leave up to Allah, tawakkul. And that middle ground, I think, would be the key to happiness, will be key to everything in life as well.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's really profound words when we had Muharram and we spoke about the Hijrah. When was it Abdurrahman ibn Auf who said, Dullani ala suq? When he gets to Medina and the Prophet splits, you know, them up into groups, a Muhajir with the Ansari, and the Ansari, you know, is prepared to give him half of everything, but this is not the Muslim, the Islamic way. The way of a Muslim is to work hard, and that's why I said, show me the market. So, Brother Abdul Aziz, the Camissa Islamic Fund, what's that all about?
Okay, Jazakallah. And I think the name hopefully rolls off a bit easier from the tongue compared to our previous name.
Okay. Yes.
So maybe just taking a step back. So it's not a new company, and people always ask me, did you leave Camissa? Where are you now? And I think it's key to understand that it's still the same business, still the same people running it. And more importantly, still the same investment process that has been key to the success of Camissa in the past. So the business is 20 years old, and coincidentally on our 20th anniversary, our previous shareholder, Camissa, well, they actually call Camissa Tisa Holdings, they decided to sell their shares And one of the conditions was that we couldn't keep our name.
Okay.
So
That happens. That happens.
it's
When
their
there's
name.
yeah.
So we were forced to change the name. And
Okay.
Camissa is actually, it's got powerful roots in Cape Town. It's a Khoi word that actually means place of sweet waters. And
Mashallah. I was going to ask, is it the acronym of some type or
Someone's surname.
yeah,
place of sweet?
waters.
Waters,
yeah.
mashallah.
And there's a Camissa river that actually runs from Table Mountain. I think
Mashallah.
it's either, yeah.
So that's
Startup
some
and-
thought, beautiful
Yes,
thought gone into
yes,
the name.
Yes, alhamdulillah. So,
And I think, Brother Abdulaziz, especially when you're entrusting somebody with money, you know, you hear of pyramid schemes and, you know, fly by night businesses. You don't feel comfortable in just giving your money to any new business. So the fact that Camissa is 20 years old, you know, is really reassures you that, you know, that they know what they do. But you came from a big, in your profile, I see you came from a big group or big company. So you started in mainstream.
I started off in the
finance.
conventional side, and actually I fell into this industry by accident.
Okay.
Because my background is I'm an accountant. I did a bit of IT, and my previous, can I mention them? Alan
Yeah.
Gray.
Go for it.
Alan Gray.
I used to work at Alan Gray, and they headhunted me to set up the investment systems.
Okay, mashallah.
And so I didn't know much about the markets or anything.
Yeah.
And alhamdulillah, what transpired there is that this is back in 1998. So I'm sure
sir.
before many of us were born. But
I was matric that year.
but we actually had a market crash in 1998.
Okay.
And also Alan Gray wasn't doing too well. So they
Okay.
were looking for people to do their investments.
Okay.
So like I said, I fell into this industry by accident because they asked me, don't I want to move across and join the investment team?
Mm-hmm.
And alhamdulillah, it's been a good journey. I've learned a lot. And the question always arises by the time, so Alan Gray was a small company back in 98.
Oh, okay.
We were actually 36 people.
Only back
At
then.
36
yeah.
people, the total, what they call the assets under management, was about 9 billion rand. By the time I left, they were managing 200 billion rand. And we were well over 400 people, 10 years later, 2008. So, but I think, the reason for me leaving was actually quite simple. I've always had a desire to manage a Sharia fund. And I think and we can speak about that later, but I think that the big opportunity has always been to make sure that our Muslim community has as much opportunity, but also bring that professionalism, that same quality that you had in the conventional market to the Sharia market as well. And unfortunately, I tried my level best to get Alan Gray to start their own Sharia funds.
Okay.
But unfortunately, they felt the market was too small for them. So I knew I basically hit the glass ceiling at Alan Gray.
They probably want to kick themselves now because, I mean, everybody has gone the Sharia.
Yeah, and the market has grown significantly as well. Yes. Alhamdulillah.
Shirashik? Yeah.
No, I have my few questions. You can ask inshallah. So can we jump straight into inshallah, attack the meat, inshallah?
Okay.
I've got some questions that I want to, for the benefit of myself and on the listeners and the viewers, inshallah.
Yes.
Is Islamic investments truly Islamic, or is it just cosmetically enhanced?
Yes, we get that question a lot. And when I go to Johannesburg, you get the dividing line in Johannesburg. You get the what I call ultra conservative, and then you get the more moderate views. And unfortunately, it's like we started off and we talked about the moderate way, the middle way. Like most things in life, you can go to an extreme and it's quite easy to say everything is haram. It's not permissible. But that's not practical. We've got people that obviously have savings. And we had the late Maulana Taqaran as on our Sharia board. And he was very good at, bringing that context to any subject. And I think my key learning from him was that effectively, if you want to doubt something and if you want to find fault, there will be faults. So I can't categorically say, no, it's all 100% halal. But the same with most things in life. I mean, this bottle of water, for example, it goes through a process before it gets here. How can we be 100% certain that it is pure 100% water as opposed to reverse osmosis?
Tap water or mineral.
So
just to answer that question, because I think it speaks to the heart of the issue. in the sense that what are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to give people as well? And the reality is that we've got a huge issue in the Middle East in particular, where people, they 5 times a day in the masjid, first row, but then they say, I can eat interest, I can do this because there's nothing really 100% halal. So at least by doing to the best of our abilities and to the best that we can, bring a product to the market that, the day of Qiyamah, I can stand up and say, Allah, I at least tried.
Right.
I tried to do something to this industry and steer people away from 100% riba and 100%, non-halal sources of income. And that's the objective. Of course, we want to get 100% pure halal income. But how do we do that in a context where we're a Muslim minority in a country where the entire banking sector is a riba-based banking sector? What we can do is create alternatives and make sure that people are aware of those alternatives. And actually, by creating that awareness and by what I call activating that latent pool of capital, we create greater consciousness and we actually spur on these financial institutions to create 100% halal investments for our community. But if people say, no, it's not halal, so I'm going to stick with my riba, we will never meet that objective. And I think I'm passionate about this topic because this is very important. It speaks to, I always joke with my brother-in-law, Sheikh Isa, and tell him that, you make da'wah from the mimbar in terms of, encouraging people to make salah, etc., which is very important. My da'wah is to try to get people conscientized in terms of making sure their money is halal from a halal source. And I think, we will not get it 100% correct. And there will always be these sort of, at the edges, people will say that these things are not halal and steer clear of it. But, what is the alternative? And that's really where I'm coming from. So, Mahr, I'm not answering the question directly, but I think you get the context.
Yes, I do.
And where we're going with this, yes.
And subhanAllah, if we study the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ, we know the Prophet ﷺ mentioned to us that one of the means and the causes that people's du'as are rejected is because of the haram they consume. And so that's important to keep in mind. This is the context that we are speaking about, inshallah. But Sheikh Yusuf, you want to say something?
Ustad Abdul, I have a question. So there's a Sharia board on every on your Islamic fund, right? So a product that now gets sold to a consumer or client, does the Sharia board come up with a product, or does the financial people come up with a product and then it's brought to the Sharia board and they look at it and they say, okay, take that away, put that in? How's a product created?
Very good question. And it's actually, again, a combination. So typically what would happen, so there's effectively two types of products. And they are products that are already in existence. Okay. What we call off-the-shelf product. And typically these would be, for example, equity investments, investing in a company like Anglo American or MTN. We know at the heart, those businesses, selling airtime, selling handsets, that is compliant business. There's no issue there. What is the issue is in terms of what I call the peripheral issues around how much interest they earn or how much interest they pay, those type of things. In those situations, we would take the product to the Sharia board. They would say, look at this. And MTN is a good case in point because, and I would like to think our Sharia board is on top of their game because what we've discovered is that MTN, for example, whilst we might think that 99% or even 100% of their revenues are just airtime and handsets, they do earn some revenues from, for example, loans. And a structured product, for example. Okay. So one needs to be aware of that. One needs to be able to calculate the quantum of that. And what we do, and we can talk about that later, is purify the income that we get from MTN as well. So the Sharia board plays a vital role in terms of those traditional off-the-shelf products. In terms of saying it is off-the-shelf, it is generally compliant, but these are the things you need to look out for to make it even more compliant. The second aspect is then in terms of new products. And this is also where in South Africa, I think we've come a long way. And these are typically what we call the Sukuk market. And we can talk about what is a Sukuk. But the Sharia board will play a much bigger role in terms of developing the product and making sure it is a Sharia compliant product as well.
Okay. Yeah. You spoke about one more question, because this is a common approach that many people have. Say, for example, it's a loan from your conventional bank, and then versus the loan from the Islamic banking section of that same bank. So, for example, conventionally, you would pay back 13.5%.
Mm.
And with the Islamic funding, you would pay back 15%.
Yes.
So the person tells me, but it's the same. So that's 1.5% less. So I'll just stick with conventional. Is that the approach that many people?
It's an approach many people take, but that's precisely what we try to avoid. I mean, the Quran is actually quite clear. Obviously, I mean, we've got ulama here. You know,
No,
that
go for it,
ayahs
go
are
for it,
much
go for
better
it, go for it.
than I know. But the Bani Israel, they used to say that trade is like interest. And Allah Ta'ala says, but Allah Ta'ala prohibited interest and He's permitted trade.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of Sharia and the beauty of Islam is that you can actually restructure product. The outcome might be the same, as Sheikh has mentioned. You know, you can,
That's how they're looking at the outcome, not the process.
Yeah.
So there's two elements: redesigning the process and redesigning your intention. And we know that intention is so critical in Islam. So that's the thing. That's why I always say that, you know, to make a business halal is actually not that difficult. People always think that it's cumbersome, it's problematic, but it's not. I mean, Islam, that's the beauty of Islam. It's a simple way of life, and it's really about your approach. If you want to make something Sharia compliant, it's actually quite easy to do it. You just need to, and that's why we spend a lot of our time, especially with the financial institutions that we deal with, in designing the documentation around the product. And so from the outside, it might look like, what's the difference between this thing and a conventional? But it's actually in terms of the design, in terms of the contracts that you've signed, and in terms of the what we call the risk and rewards, and how that is stacks up as well. And I think that's the difference. And we get that criticism a lot. They say, but it's the same. It's the same outcome, but actually it's not. And that is what makes it Sharia compliant as well.
So Sheikh Ashik, with all the checks and balances, the barakah of, you know, having that pure intention is lost.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned a good point, Sheikh Yusuf. I've heard many people say, you know, buying house through the bank and buying house through a conventional bank and buying house through, say, Absa Islamic Finance, whatever Islamic finance institution, they would say it's the same. But they don't know the mechanics in the background. You know, there's a different, these products are set up entirely different, and it will have a different ruling in the Sharia. The conventional bank, it will be a qard, which generates interest, whereas your Islamic finance institutions, they will have things like mudaraba and ijara and all of these type of different facilities. Yeah.
You used Arabic term, Sheikh, so
mudaraba is translated as?
That is not my strong point.
The Sheikh will know better.
Yeah, so the mudaraba is basically typically like a partnership. You've got what they call the Rabul Mal, the capital provider, the mudarib, the one that works with the capital.
Yeah.
So it's basically, and those structures are actually, it's not new. It actually pre-existed
Islam,
well.
Definitely.
And what the Nabi Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam basically did is effectively give legitimacy to those type of structures. And that's also a critical point, because you know, Sharia doesn't mean that because we live in a Muslim minority country, we just need to go with the flow. You know, the advent of Islam was in a period of ignorance. It was in a period where darkness prevailed. So, and yet all of those, you know, type of trade and transactions flourished during those periods as well.
I have a question from actually before the program. Somebody sent me a question, Ustad Abdul Aziz, and it says, "What should one be on the lookout for when trying to purchase a Sharia compliant share?" He was talking about stock exchange, so he wants to buy in on the stock exchange, and what should he look at? Example, Asupol shares, insurance company. Is that, I think probably is asking, is that allowed or whatever?
Yes.
But he's asking stock exchange, you want to buy stocks, what do you look for?
Yes. So let me just take a step back and explain the stock exchange, because there's also this debate around whether buying shares is halal and permissible. And effectively, the world over, how the stock exchange is really just a means of allowing people to buy what we call economic and equity interest in companies. So if you want to buy MTN, you'll need to buy the shares on the stock exchange. Eventually, if you buy all the shares, you own MTN.
Okay.
You can change the CEO, you can take all the cash out of the business.
You can
that's effectively
kick out the founder of the company.
Yes. But the way these massive publicly listed companies, you would need to buy the shares on the exchange.
Okay.
So and it's like any trade. I mean, Epic Market, always I use that example. Epic Market, everybody knows. But if you really want good quality fruit and veg, you need to go there and you need to buy in bulk and really.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
So you can buy all of the produce from Epic Market.
Yes.
And then obviously you would.
And that's what the big boys do. They buy
Yes.
and you buy from them.
Yes, yes. So that's the first thing. And then, so what do you look out for when you want to buy a company? It's really two things. It's effectively what we call the qualitative characteristics, and then what we call the quantitative. Now, qualitative really just means what is the business of the company. And I mean, the MTN example that we used, it needs to be 99% or almost 100% halal type of activity. Unfortunately, insurance is not a permissible activity from a Sharia point of view. So, come like Asupol wouldn't be a Sharia compliant stock. Similarly, the banks in South Africa, a lot of the financial institutions, but there are other, many of the mining companies would be compliant. Many of the industrial, what we call industrial type companies, would be compliant as well. The second, as I said, the second characteristic is what we call the quantitative, where you would need out to, and again, the principle of riba. Try not to, as Shakespeare said, neither borrow nor lender be. So Shakespeare for a Thursday night. So effectively, you're limiting the amount of debt and then the amount of cash that the company has, so that it means that the company is not paying too much interest or receiving too much interest. And it's really just those two criteria, by and large. Yes.
So, Brother Abdulaziz, you mentioned insurance. So, is this buzzword? I see it in banks, banners up takaful. What is takaful then versus insurance?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm not the expert on takaful, because takaful is a product which is very different to what we do.
Okay.
So we manage Sharia funds, we manage equity investments. But takaful effectively is a Sharia compliant product that effectively allows members to benefit from what we call risk sharing. And again, the principle in Sharia is always that if myself and Sheikh Ashik transact, but he will benefit disproportionately to me, then that contract is inherently unfair. So the principle of fairness comes through as well. And typically what you find in conventional insurance, you get these massive payouts. Individuals that get massive payouts, but then what happens is everybody else's premiums go up to fund that.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes.
And they say the house never loses.
So it's like a big casino.
Yes. Whereas the takaful is all about risk sharing and sharing across the members. Yes.
I remember some of the more orthodox mashayikh. I don't know if this is anything close to takaful, but I'm talking about late 90s, maybe like Sheikh Ibn Uthaymin would say, why don't brothers of the masjid pull together their money? Every month somebody gives like 500 riyal. That money just stays there. In case somebody's car breaks, then they will help that individual. And this was a type of insurance that he had in mind, that nobody will now try and trick that fund because it's your own money that's going. So pull some money together so that, for a rainy day. Sheikh Ashik?
Khair, inshallah. Another question. So you mentioned some of the one of the main principles of Islamic investments is the absence of riba, right? What are some of the other Islamic principles that an Islamic investment company that will keep in mind when investing the wealth of others?
Very good. That's a good question, because it speaks to two things. It speaks to the typical things that we need to look out for in our investments, but then also what governs ourselves as fiduciaries and portfolio managers. It's the same as you basically put in a position of trust. So let me start with the first aspect. So in terms of the investments itself, as I said, there's an organization called IOFI, which is the accounting and auditing organization for Islamic financial institutions. They're based in Bahrain. They set the standards for Sharia funds and Sharia asset managers. And effectively, what they require us to do is do extensive screening of the businesses. Literally go through the entire business and make sure that all aspects of that business is compliant. There is what they call a 5% tolerance level. So we would allow maybe 5% for interest received, incidental to the business. Or in the case of retailers, for example, that maybe sell non-halal meats or non-halal products, that can't be more than 5%. The other aspect is, as I mentioned, the whole concept of riba and reducing the amount of interest paid or received by the business. And we do that through monitoring the balance sheet, looking at the cash and the debt in the bank, etc. So that would pertain to the actual investments. When you look at the asset manager, we set ourselves up to a higher standard to what you would normally get in a conventional market. And that is because not only do we have the normal duty of care to our investors, we've got a duty of Sharia compliance as well. And part of that is not just you buy the share, you invest it, now it's all done. There's ongoing monitoring that needs to happen. There's ongoing awareness of, is this company still compliant? And then even if it is compliant, most of the companies that we invest in fact, all of the companies that we invest in, we try and get dividends out of those companies. Sometimes they go through hard times and they don't declare dividend. But where we receive dividends, we would purify the dividend as well through a calculation, which my good friend Abdul said Aldi does. And it's yes, he's a maths fundi. So he would calculate what percentage of the income that we received via the dividend would be non-compliant. And then our last responsibility is to make sure that it doesn't stop there again. We need to make sure that those monies goes into the right hands. And we've got a whole team at Camissa that actually looks at that, try and find appropriate charities and worthy causes to give that money to as well.
Inshallah. Just another question, inshallah. I don't know if you if you're at liberty to share this information with us, but what type of can you give us examples? What type of companies would a company like Camissa invest the wealth of others into?
Okay. So at the moment, I can go through our portfolio, but that would be too boring, I think. But we've got a range. So I'll give some examples locally and maybe some globally as well. So I mean, on the local front, there's quite a few mining companies that we have. One of our big holdings is a company called Northern Platinum, for example. They do the platinum and palladium mining in South Africa. Similar to them, there's another company, Anglo American Platinum as well. Those would be on the mining side. I've mentioned MTN. MTN is also a sizable holding for us. And so those are examples locally. We also manage global funds. So, I mean, the exciting thing about managing and looking at global companies, you can invest anywhere. The US, Europe.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Europe is going through a tough time with the energy crisis. But, I mean, a company that we currently have is a company called Siemens Energy, which is one of the largest renewable energy companies in Europe. And given the current
was
crisis...
Was it the same company that made the cell phones back in the day, Siemens? Oh, no.
They actually sold that business. That went to Alcatel back in the day. And then I think Nokia bought that company. So Nokia is no longer in existence. So it originally.
And so that's important. Also, businesses are like
businesses have history, and it's fascinating to just track how businesses have evolved over the years. I mean, in our context, we've had a company like Barloworld. That Barloworld and Anglo American used to be the two biggest companies in South Africa. And the reason is that they had all of these underlying businesses. And today, a lot of those companies are listed in their own right. And Anglo's has gone bigger, but Barloworld is a fraction or shadow of its former self in terms of its size as well.
So we're talking names, and I don't know how legal it is for us to use names. But, Brother Abdul Aziz, I buy stationery, I see this name. I go into, buy cleaning products, I see this name. Bidvest.
Yes.
What is that? What I mean, do they buy company? Does this company now buy over smaller?
Like a holdings company.
Walton's, the stationery place is now Bidvest Walton. Like things like that.
They've got the proudly Bidvest sort of slogan. So Bidvest is exactly that.
Like Barloworld and...
Yes, it's a conglomerate, and they own. I mean, my brother works at one of the Bidvest companies, which manufacture office furniture, for example. So what they do is they will identify a business. They'll exactly what we would do: buy the business and just buy 100% of the shares, and then they get access to the cash flow. What they tend to do is not change the name, so that's why you still have Waltons, like Sissel Nurse Furniture, all of those names. Yes, yes. So Bidvest is like that.
Sheikh, you have a question?
I'll go for it.
Okay. So I leave the masjid after every waqt, Brother Abdullah. Somebody comes up to me and says, is this product halal? Personally, I am a muqallid. I'm a follower when it comes to finance and banking because it's not my strong point. The answer that I give, you can tell me please, this is my question. Is my approach correct or wrong?
Mm.
I tell the brother, look, if you went into any eatery
Yes.
and there's a certificate from whichever body,
Mm.
and you feel that you feel tranquility in your heart, you feel okay, I can eat here because of that certificate. Can we then say the same principle can be applied to a product from
Some
an
financial
institution where there was a Sharia board, they looked at it and they gave a stamp of approval?
Mm.
Yes, very good question, Sheikh. Because again, it speaks to what we call transparency.
Mm.
A lot of people, you know, and we find that unfortunately this is quite prevalent in Europe and even in some places like Asia, for example, where people adopt a Muslim name or a nice sounding Muslim name, but you know, it's just there to hoodwink people. We see this now quite prevalent in some other sectors as well. But you know, for us, it's all about the transparency. Firstly, we do have a halal certificate. It's called the Sharia certificate.
Yes.
That gets issued twice a year by our
Okay.
Sharia board. And it's critical. Just like we want, can I mention the halal body certificate?
inshallah.
No, there's certificates. There's be an expiry date.
Yes, yes, definitely.
So because we know that that expiry date indicates that maybe
There
the
needs to be
inspector
checks and
didn't,
balances.
the inspector didn't check. You know,
Yeah.
it's an old certificate.
Yes,
And
yes.
so likewise, we need to have a current Sharia certificate. And that is available to all our investors. And it actually goes onto our website. So
Okay.
people can see it there. Our Sharia board is accessible as well. We've gone for scholars. Our scholar in Cape Town is Maulana Muhammad Khan, for example. He basically took over from the late Maulana Taha Karan, was also our previous chairman of our Sharia board. And likewise, we've got Mufti Ahmed Suleiman in Johannesburg, Mufti Zubair Bayat in Durban. So our investors, it's basically, I mean, and these are personalities that are very well known in the community. So that gives transparency. So again, don't take Abdul Aziz's word for it. That
Yeah,
this is
there's a
compliant.
certificate, there's a halal certificate.
And
Yeah.
go speak to our muftis. And
Yeah.
go speak to the ulama.
Yeah.
You know. Yes.
Just one question. These scholars, I did the what's the course called? This it's a very famous organization there. I have this Islamic banking course, man. It's called I can't.
Okay, you did the course.
Yeah, I did the course.
Okay.
These scholars that sit on these boards, right? Do they have a background in like conventional finance or purely Islamic finance?
It's a combination.
Okay.
So I know Mufti Zubair and Mufti Ahmed, they're members of IOFI. So
Okay.
in South Africa, the requirement would be that the scholars need to be members of IOFI. Mufti Ahmed is also a BCom graduate. He also BCom degree. I think anybody that learned or was taught by Maulana Taha Karan, the late Maulana Taha Karan, you can accept that.
Yeah, no, definitely. No.
He's well versed,
Yeah.
and we know Maulana Muhammad has written books on the topic as well. So yeah, alhamdulillah, I think
Alhamdulillah.
So, Ustad Abdul Aziz, you know, I have cousins or friends that work in finance, and then I ask them, give me advice. And the first thing they always tell me is save.
Yes.
How important is saving?
Well, the key to investing is you can only invest what you've saved. And yeah, I think the one thing is making sure that we prioritize our expenditures. I mean, we all know that if you're working for a boss, if you're working for a company, you don't really have control of how much money you earn. It's always a struggle in terms of getting that bonus or getting that increase. You've got very little control over that. What we do have control over is your expenditures. And I think, unfortunately, in our community, that's probably where we need to do a lot more work, because we're living in an environment where everything can be bought on hire purchase or in installments, and you only need to afford the installment. And that's the culture.
Yes.
And unfortunately, that's the wrong culture, because already in the last 18 months, we've seen on the conventional side, interest rates go up. So anybody that has debt, you know, be it a car loan or a home loan or whatever, on a conventional side, is paying a lot more today than they paid a year ago.
And his salary might not have
And the
increased.
salary might not have, and we know fuel price come down on Wednesday, but in general, we're still paying a lot more compared to 3 years ago.
Yes.
So there's this concept of inflation. We, you know, just the amount of goods we could have bought 10 years ago with the 10,000 Rand is far fewer today compared to 10 years ago. So to just try and maintain what you could buy 10
Mm.
years ago, that basket of goods and services, your money needs to grow by inflation. Otherwise, you're going to get poorer
Mm.
effectively, because
Yes.
your money is going to buy fewer goods
Yes.
as you get older. And sticking it under the mattress is not a strategy.
Mm.
Or putting it
We
in
were gonna
furniture.
ask about that. Yeah. So
Um,
so one of my mentors, he says that if he looks at why people use credit cards and buy things on higher purchases, it's a lack of sabr. And the Prophet says, somebody hasn't been given anything better than sabr.
Mm.
So instead of saving to buy that car, we can have that car today and then pay it off.
Yes.
And the minute that car is like 2 years in, the dealership calls you again and tells you, look, it's going to depreciate even further.
Yeah.
Come and fetch another one. And, you're in this continuous cycle. And
Yes.
so according to him, he says, no, we don't have sabr. And because we don't have sabr, we get ourselves in this sticky,
Situation,
slippery. So Sheikh, you say the under the mattress thing doesn't really work. And we've been busy now with the Qabil to checklist, marriage and so forth and so on for a few weeks. So if somebody were to get married, and for me it's funny, I had a phone call this afternoon. A foreign national brother wants to marry a sister. I ask him, what's the dowry? He says, I don't know. I mean, so what do they really discuss? So from a financial, professional point of view, what would be a good dowry to ask, and how could that dowry then work for the sister
As an investment.
also as an investment?
That's a very good question, because I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that question. But in general, anything that can appreciate in value. And I think in Islam, I mean, we can speak about the Mahr Fatimi and the value of that. But the reality is that Islam actually is quite practical in terms of its application and looking at value.
Mahr Fatimi, the value of
It's
Mahr?
about 16,000 rand, I think.
So it wasn't cheap also. I mean, it's not a small amount, because I heard in another podcast, somebody was mentioning Mahr Fatimi and the person said, oh, that's so little, but he didn't know I'm sure he wasn't aware of the actual
it's not
value.
a normal 200 rand that we get married for in Cape Town. So, but just on that point, Sheikh, one of the critical things is actually if it's something that can appreciate in value. And normally people ask obviously for a nominal amount of money, or the lady's lucky, maybe a
Token
car or
amount.
something. But most of those things depreciate in value. So your traditional sort of items like a Kruger Rand or a portion of a Kruger Rand or silver, those are actually good commodities to have exposure to. And in general, there's a whole body of research that shows that in periods of inflation, those are actually good commodities to have, because their value also go up.
I was like amazed when I got married, and I'm married now for 17 years. Alhamdulillah. So I went and asked my father-in-law, and he said a gold rand. So I went to the coin exchange, and they told me it was like was like a couple of hundred of rands, but it wasn't a Kruger rand. Like I didn't know there was a gold rand and a Kruger rand. And then I said, Uncle, are you sure? He said, look, you're a student. So we agreed on a quarter Kruger rand.
Yes.
A few years later, we went on holiday to the UAE. My wife wanted spending money, and then she cashed in the coin.
Yeah.
If I think a few months ago, we came across the value of a Kruger, and she wanted to really kick herself for cashing it in back then, because it's like really appreciated, mashallah. I had no idea how good gold does. So that would be a good
Alhamdulillah, personal experience. I got married 19 years ago, and the Kruger Rand of that time is worth more than 10 times today. Yes.
So it's really something we can look into.
Sheikh Abdul Aziz, is it the right time to invest now?
It's always the right time to invest. That's a question that comes up a lot as well. And there's two key decisions or key sort of principles that decides whether you should be investing. Firstly, if you've got money to invest, then always it's a good time to invest. And secondly, I think the objective of investing. clearly, if somebody wants to go for Hajj next year, then maybe a long-term type investment like an equity fund or similar is maybe not the right investment. But in general, and we've just discussed the whole concept of inflation. Inflation is such a thing that erodes the value of money if it's just kept in nominal form. So investing protects one and at least gives you that buffer in terms of saying that in 5 years, 10 years time, whatever money I have then would be able to at least meet my requirements in terms of what the value of goods and service are at that stage. The other question that always comes up is markets are volatile. Shouldn't I wait? The reality is markets will always be volatile. And I always refer back to 2020 when we went into lockdown in South Africa, that March 2020.
Nobody expected that.
Nobody expected, and the markets didn't expect
Yes,
it.
yes.
The markets went down 35% in the space of 4 weeks. A lot of my gray hairs, I got in that 4-week period because what happened is I saw the previous market corrections in 1998, 2008. And those are always, it's interesting because if you look at those periods, it's months. It's like 4 months, 6 months. You get a few days where the markets go up or just go sideways. I've never seen a market go 35% down in 4 weeks. But the key to that is that because of our experience and collectively in our team, we have over 160 years of investment experience. And alhamdulillah, the one thing we knew was that it was just panic. And you can actually profit out of panic.
Yes.
And that was one of the best times to buy investments.
People were selling now. I need cash. I need to be liquid.
Just one example. A company like MTN went down to 57 Rand. Today, MTN is 3 times that price. And this is literally 2 years ago. I mean, and similarly, I mean, we bought a company like Anglo American Platinum. It went down to 750 Rand. It doubled since then. So
like they say, een mens se dood is 'n ander mens se brood.
Yes. And the point is, just answering that question, people would have said, now is not the right time to invest. Markets are falling, it's crashing. But actually, in the subsequent 6-month period, so the markets went down, say the end of March, April. So from May to the end of the year, the markets went up 56%. So by the end of the year, if you had to look at it, the market was up 4%. What was the big fuss about? The markets
just panic,
But it was that concentrated panic period, which you could have made money by just investing at that time and just riding it out. So to answer the question, it's always a good time to invest. Clearly, one needs to get financial advice. You need to know what you're doing, know what your objectives are, etc. But I think don't let timing be an issue, and don't let your quantum of amount that you, because people always say, I need 100,000 or I need 50,000. You can start with as little as 500 Rand. And that's the other thing that we're trying to bring to our market. Our Muslim community, we always feel that investing is for rich people. Investing is actually for poor people.
A lot of poor people making the pool bigger.
But also they need to get out of poverty. And the way to do that is to save yourself out of poverty. And that's a critical point as well.
So I have 2 questions now. The one is getting yourself out of poverty, and I work in the construction sector also, so I have people that work for me. And the amazing thing is that the minute a child is born, they take out a policy for this child's education. That culture of saving towards education, I don't think it's that important to the Muslim community or our community. Is that true?
It's very much true.
So now your kid is in matric and wat gaan ons nou maak? He has to go to university and there's no funds.
Yes, I mean the key thing is there's 2 things. There's a lack of awareness and a lack of funds. The lack of funds, I mean, that's going to be, if you don't have the money to invest, then that is an issue. So you might be aware of the need for your child to have a solid future in the future, a solid sort of post schooling sort of opportunity. But if you don't have funds, you don't have funds. But I think it's really the second issue around the awareness, because people would spend like crazy during, as a child, birthday parties, etc. Forgetting that actually the best gift you can give a child on their birthday, if you do celebrate birthdays, is to invest their money. Buy them a candle and tell them, okay, the rest of the money is going
the cake money is going into your account.
Yes. So I think that is critical, and that awareness, so that, because look, the parents will always have access to the funds. If they need the funds, they can use it as well. But it's almost again your responsibility to your children is to try and set them up in life.
And
as well.
amana, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Sheikh Abdul Aziz, I have a question. So, as an imam, most imams wouldn't have a provident fund or a retirement annuity, and we basically most imams work till they die, or they told, look here, you out of expiry date has been reached, and you graduate in the masjid, so go. So then he has to live off a government pension. Not that salary, imam salaries are much more than government pension. But what product can an imam buy into? We're speaking about 500 Rand. I spoke to the person that gives me financial advice, and he told me, if you want to retire at 55, 60, and you want to live the way you live, you have to save 20% of your income. And for me, that's like very difficult. But what kind of product can an imam buy? Because the masjid might not buy it. Yes, maybe there's one or two masajid that does that, but in the person's personal capacity, what can he do with his 500 Rand?
I think that the most important thing is to just put it away. There are obviously a range of options in terms of how you can, what product to buy, etc. But the critical thing, the reality is that our imams, as Sheikh has mentioned, are not well paid.
Yeah.
And it's hand to mouth in terms of the monthly salary. In most cases, the salary doesn't even stretch till the 25th or the 30th when the next paycheck comes in. But so to the extent that they can, to put that, try and work out a reasonable budget and try and stick to a savings plan. And then there's a whole host of opportunities. You get what we would call high growth opportunities, which is high end equity type of investment, like the MTNs that we talked about. There are others that are more looking to preserve, especially as the imams get older. They need more certainty in terms of what they've already saved over the years.
And the Slavats get less because they can't go to as many functions.
Yes. So there's a range of options. Ideally, I mean, in most cases, and we can put people in contact with financial advisors that can give them financial advice. But the critical thing is to start saving as soon as possible. I mean, there's a whole body of research that shows that somebody that starts at 25 and saves till 35 is still a lot better off than somebody that starts at 30 and saves for 15 years longer.
Okay.
So the earlier you start, the better off you will be.
That was beneficial.
Sheikh, you always get from, time to time, you get fad words, right? So like, what's this? Dieting, and low carb, high fat. And so in finance, you hear about people doing Forex on their phone and crypto, I mean, this is obviously something that established funds won't encourage, right? Like doctors won't encourage you to do low carb, high fat. You can lose that weight, but you gain it.
So I've probably in the last year received over 50 inquiries, if I can call it that, people that are looking to get into Forex trading and people that are looking to get into Bitcoin, crypto. The reality is two things. Firstly, most people, mashallah, they're very good at their jobs, their day jobs. But they don't have with all due respect, don't have a clue about general investing. Now, most of us, that are in the industry, we do some course like a CFA or a chartered accountancy or something in that line. Then you need to work for a number of years. And to be honest, I still don't understand crypto. So, because I mean, the reality with crypto is two things. Firstly, the original purpose of crypto was to bring an alternative means of exchange and monetary system or digital token to the market, because people lost faith in the conventional monetary system. And this stemmed from the US in particular, which, with the, massive buying of bonds by the government and all of those things. So, but it's lost its purpose, because most people that buy crypto buy it because they think the price is going to go higher and they're going to sell it to somebody else. Now, what I learned in sort of investments is that is called greater fool theory.
Because
you're hoping to sell it to a greater fool than yourself.
Yeah, greater fool. Okay.
So that greater fool theory dominates the crypto market.
Okay.
And I mean, just yesterday, crypto, the Bitcoin fell below $19,000. And
And it's at its highest, what was
it
it?
was over $40,000.
Oh,
So
it's a big fall. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't understand it, because what I was taught is that if you take a company like MTN or a mining company, they mine a product, or they sell airtime, or they sell a handset, you know what profit they get from it. That profit is basically the cash flow. They will pay you a dividend from that cash flow. If the company is liquidated, you can go and go to Randburg and claim the MTN head office. There's assets there that you can get back as a shareholder. Crypto, there's nothing. It's basically
You can't-
zeros and ones.
Okay, yeah.
And it's code.
Yeah.
So there's nothing, what we call, there's no intrinsic value. And unfortunately, maybe it's a limitation on our side and a weakness on our side, but we were taught that something has to have an intrinsic value, either through its cash flows that it generates, or through the balance sheet, or the tangible assets that you get.
Asset backed, yeah.
Crypto, sorry. I don't mean crypto.
It wasn't a play on words.
Freudian slip. The crypto market, there's nothing like that. And the same with forex trading. I mean, inherently, forex trading is actually not a permissible activity, because currency and money is not an asset; it's a means of exchange, and you can't buy dollars and sell euros and record a profit. And I think our dean is quite clear on that topic as well. But yet, a lot of people want to get into it. They want to trade forex, and they want to trade crypto as well. Unfortunately.
Ashik?
No, Sheikh Abdul Aziz wanted to speak about Sukuk.
Okay.
Can you just elaborate on Sukuk, inshallah?
Okay, so I'll try and keep it very brief and exciting, because it can be a bit dry sometimes. Effectively, a Sukuk is an asset-backed instrument where effectively the Sukuks that we typically buy, we're getting the underlying stream of cash flows as an investor. So it's basically taking, in general, it's taking an asset, or what we call a illiquid sort of investment, and liquidizing it for us effectively. So in South Africa, the Sukuks that we typically have are your Murabaha type Sukuk, which is effectively an asset-backed security. The key thing with Sukuk, and why Sukuk is different to a bond, is that bonds, especially the government bonds in South Africa, it's not backed by any asset. It's basically the word of the government that they're going to pay you back your money. And whenever there's problems politically, the value of the bonds fall, because people are saying they're lying to me. They're not going to pay me back my money. So that effectively happens on the bond market. Whereas in Sukuks, because you've got an asset back, it's a lot more stable. And the key thing with investing, be it Sukuks or equity, is that Islam prohibits us to take on excessive uncertainty. And the terms, and exactly, and the terms need to be clear on both sides. So Sukuk brings that stability and certainty to the market as well. I mean, there's 7 types of Sukuks, but we're not going to go into those things at the moment.
The institution is called Ithaca.
Okay.
I did it so long, I forgot the name.
Ithaca. Okay.
Yeah, Ithaca. They offer these small courses, man. But this was specifically pertaining to someone who's going to work in the Islamic finance, in the banking sector. Yeah.
Okay. Mashallah.
Not so much investing.
2 last questions.
Yes,
inshallah.
truth, inshallah.
So, Ustad Abdul Aziz, we have Hifz schools, madrasas, always struggling with finance, having fundraisers, but these fundraisers are not sustainable.
Yeah.
So, if an organization has a little bit of funds, what would you advise them to just put it away, or like invest it in something that can?
Again, I mean, there's probably, our compliance people listen to these programs. So they will tell me, you can't give advice. So we are not allowed to give advice. So, but in general, again, the best thing that I can tell people is always the best investment anybody can make is, if you've got debt, pay down your debt, because you get a guaranteed return.
Okay.
Because especially if it is conventional loans, and
just
unfortunately,
get
rid of it, because a lot of our institutions, unfortunately, they do have debt, legacy debts, and those things. And I always tell them, pay down the debt first, and then you will have more money to save in future. And then again, they're welcome to contact us. There's a whole host of financial advisors that they can contact, and there's a range of options. Alhamdulillah, at least, not just our institution, there's quite a few Sharia compliant funds and opportunities available to our community now. So it's not a narrow field. And the other before I leave here, the other key message is that, the two things that inhibited the growth of Sharia in South Africa, Sharia compliant investing, is effectively the fact that there was not alternatives,
Mm.
and then the perception that the alternatives were inferior.
Mm.
So the Sharia guy is going to steal my money. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. Alhamdulillah, I can say here, sit here with confidence and say that in general, some of our Sharia funds have outperformed some of the best names that you might think of in the industry.
So you find non-Muslims also investing in Sharia?
Definitely, definitely, and it's for the performance. It's a purely performance. So we've got some what they call hedge funds that actually invest in our Sharia products because they run these screens and they say that your fund screens so fantastically well.
MashaAllah.
You've done so
Barakah.
well.
Yeah.
The
Alhamdulillah, it's
barakah.
a
The
barakah of
barakah.
Sharia compliance. I mean, over 5 years, 10 years, we are outperforming the conventional. But not only that, the volatility that we see is a lot less compared to the conventional funds as well. So alhamdulillah, our community doesn't have to take a step back and say that if I'm going to invest in Sharia, I'm going to get less returns. I'm going to lose money. Those days are gone. And alhamdulillah, the future is looking quite bright.
Yeah, because I have a friend that works in the Islamic department of a conventional bank, and they're finding it even difficult to convince certain masajid to now move over. So they have a banking account with this bank, and now the Islamic option is available, and then certain masajid then not move. I would have thought it's a no-brainer to move over, and they would say things like there's no deposit fee because obviously most masajid live off a towel collection, so there's a cash, but still the masajid stick to the conventional accounts.
Mafshik, if I can just, the other point that I wanted to make, and I don't know if we're going to get around to it,
No problem.
is that, and we spoke about it at the beginning, we know our 5, Islam, the 5 principles, Salah, Hajj, Zakah, all of that. As important as that is that, we know that, for you to perform Salah, you need to have wudu, you need to have a state of purity.
Prerequisites.
That same state of purity needs to apply to your finances as well. Today, unfortunately, we've done calculations that show that our Muslim community in South Africa have access to something like 200 billion rand of pension fund money.
Yes, I know.
These are people that have been working for 30, 40 years, have been saving monthly. Every month the money goes off their account, but these monies are, I call it, trapped in conventional products. What then happens is, especially if you as a member have control over it, you've got a say in terms of saying, my money needs to go here and there. They go to the guys that are advertising at the airport. They go into the guys that have ads on the TV, instead of saying that, look at the Sharia alternatives. Now, what happens is those type of people face dilemmas when they retire, because now you get a 5 million or 10 million rand payout. The bulk of that money is not compliant. You haven't gone for Hajj. You're probably close to your qabr. Those are moral dilemmas that are vexatious. I mean, people need to, you can save a lot of that heartache, especially and from my research that I've done on the show, the vast majority of listeners and viewers to this are young people.
Yes.
And the best time to start saving, and make sure that, as I saw, they always talk about regularize your fee, halalize your affairs as well. Make sure that you are invested in a Sharia compliant investment at the early stage. So by the time you get to 55, 60, 65, when you retire, you can go with certainty on Hajj. You can, your
money is halal, and Allah only accepts tayyib.
100%. And I think that's another message it's almost our mission in life, is to bring the da'wah of Sharia compliance to our Muslim community.
Yeah, so when we look at our viewers also, Sheikh Abdul Aziz, we can actually see where people are viewing from. So we see people viewing from Bahrain, Saudi, UAE, and when we check, it's expats. It's our own brothers and sisters that move there to work. I've seen a person work for years, spend everything there, and come back with nothing.
Yes.
What can we advise them? Because I mean, we do find, and we often say that foreigners work in our country, but they don't invest in our country. They don't give back, and alles gaan huis toe. But now we find nothing goes on with this individual, and nobody can live in that country forever. Sometimes we have this delusional idea: I'll be here forever, I'll die here. But there's an expiry date where they'll tell you, "Mashallah, you gave us 40 years." Masalama, nobody works over 60.
Yes.
What do you advise those people with? Because now, Maaf, to interrupt you, I find the people or the young Muslim men and women, They graduate today, and the next day they're on a plane to a Gulf country, very young. So
Yeah.
they can actually do something from 25.
Yes.
What do we?
Save. The best thing that anybody can do is they're earning what we would call hard currency, because I mean a lot of those Middle Eastern currencies are pegged to the dollar.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean our rand hit 17 and 40 to the dollar today,
Yes,
so it's fairly weak, and that means that again,
it's good for them. It's like
it's good for you if you're earning say 5,000 riyals, for example, that's almost 20,000 rand. So I'm sure if you convert that money, take 2,500 of that. That's 10,000 rand. You put it in a South African bank deposit, with the Sharia compliant bank. Just doing that act instead of spending it that side, because when it's there, it's 5,000 riyal. It doesn't sound like a lot.
oh, it is. Yeah.
It's 10,000 rand.
Yes,
So-
yes, it does. It does make sense.
That's the first step, and from there you can speak to a financial advisor. Alhamdulillah.
Ashik, any closing remarks before we get
Jazakumullah
to?
khairan. That was super beneficial. We learn all of these things in theory in class, but we never see the. I'm going to be honest. I'm this is
Already matras manager.
no. I wanted to say this is we. The Sheikh said he's not supposed to be giving advice. You're supposed to be calling Camissa,
Yes,
right?
yes.
But we benefit, alhamdulillah. So we just wanted to say Jazakallah khair to brother Abdul Aziz for
And to Sheikh Isa for
Sheikh
making it
Isa
happen.
for setting it up,
Yeah,
inshallah. I know he wanted to be here.
Make dua for his health.
Inshallah. Ameen. Shafahullah. Jazakumullah khairan. It was beneficial. I think our viewers, alhamdulillah, they've benefited a lot. We've learned something, it was educational.
It was the ilm.
It was ilm. It was ilm. Alhamdulillah.
Sheikh Abdulaziz, any closing remarks? Inshallah?
Again, just jazakallah for the invitation. Quite honored to be
Yeah, cool.
here. And I think these platforms are quite critical for our community, because traditionally, unfortunately, our young people don't go to the masajid. They fall asleep. I speak to my own son, he falls asleep in Jummah, so he doesn't listen. But they're all online.
It happens to all of us.
They're online and they listen to these programs.
Yes,
So
yes,
I
yes.
encourage you to continue with this sterling work that
Barakallahu
you do.
feekum.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. We say shukran to you also, inshallah. Just before you came, we were speaking about a sheikh that passed away, was it a month, 2 months ago? Sheikh Muhammad al-Sharif. And he said, if you don't have 3 months salary saved, you're in trouble. And that's something most of us, can't do. But perhaps, inshallah ta'ala, it's something that we need to work on. As a community, we'll become stronger. As individuals, we'll have more, confidence. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, used to seek refuge from ghalabat ad-dain, debt overcome. Yeah, and how do you translate qahr rijal?
I think qahr rijal is like a repercussion of
The ghalabat ad-dain.
Overpowered by men. Overpowered by men due to owing people
So
money.
now you have to hide from this one and that one. You owe this
Hide from
one.
the banks.
Yeah, hide from the banks. So
and stuff like
we
that.
ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from that, inshallah, and grant us a rizq which is halal and tayyiba. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.
هلا بالخميس هلا بالخميس ويكند عيال هلا بالخميس هلا بالخميس هلا بالخميس ويكند عيال